Hey guys, I'm going to post a very quick lesson on the edge. We've obviously been playing it a fair bit recently. It's one of our favourite songs. We really love the whole, in fact, all the tones on this album are just quite amazing. But one of the problems is this book is a fair bit incorrect, or we think it's incorrect anyway. Some of the positions and the tabs and things are quite a bit off. Look, recognize it's really challenging trying to transcribe albums. Sometimes, things are low in the mix, there's effects, there's just weird stuff going on. So look, I'm going to try and do my interpretation of the edge and what I think it should be played like. It is a fair bit different to the book, especially the middle section, the nylon string middle section. If you're interested in playing that, it's really helpful to know how classical guitar is played and how nylon guitar is played, as Steve obviously does. And he uses those techniques in that middle section in the breakdown. So I'll go through that in a minute, but yeah, I'll post all the PDFs so you can have a look at it and challenge me, tell me I'm wrong. Anyway, it's not the right way, it's just what works for me really anyway. Now, I'm not going to play the intro section. The intro section is pretty amazing, and Steve is obviously a master of nylon string guitar, so I'm not even going to attempt to do that. Although there's a little bit of an interesting insight. The first chord sort of thing is really interesting. Just to give you a bit of an insight, there's lots and lots of open strings, and that's one of the tricks of nylon string, and in fact any acoustic guitar playing. Open strings I should say, will just help things sound bigger and gives you more sustain. When you tend to play a fretted note on an acoustic guitar, the sustain really doesn't last that long. So open strings is really the trick to playing any sort of acoustic guitar, and Steve obviously uses that quite extensively in this song, so I'll talk about that. But basically, there's nothing complicated going on. It's like an E minor to a G to an A. Not sure if it's an A major or an A minor there. I think it's an A minor, but what it is a B major at the end, and that B major will give you the harmonic minor. Harmonic minor scale again is a really popular thing in classical guitar and certainly older classical music. So again, Steve knows what he's doing here. So it's important to really make sure that B major comes out nice and loud, because that's also sort of the real pivot point to getting back into this, the key of this song. So I should have mentioned, sorry, at the start, guitar is tuned down a whole full step. So this guitar's in D standard. So what you are seeing in the tab, open E string is not going to sound as an open E string, it's going to sound as a D string. So every string is dropped down a whole tone. So coming back, like I said, so you hear that chord is really sort of creating the tension there, and that's what we call the dominant 7. That's the 5th. So B major over an E minor I should say, we'll always want to resolve back to the E minor. So I won't go into the theory of why, but that B major is a really, really strong chord that creates that tension, and that's why we go into the next riff. So the main riff is obviously lots of distortion. And Steve has posted a separate lesson to that particular riff. So thank you, Steve, for doing that. Really, really helpful. What he wasn't quite clear about was the way that he played it. He certainly articulated the notes really clearly. And like I said at the start, this isn't necessarily his way of doing it or the right way of doing it. It's just the way that I find works really well. So it's just a sort of a E minor sort of riff, but remember we're a step down. It's important to get that, and that is one of the key notes that is wrong in the book. So the tab is right, but the musical notation is wrong. So they've actually written the wrong note in the music notation. It's just, yeah, it's really strange. It's all over the shop. But anyway, it's an E minor riff. Now, this is the bit that I really want to challenge and just throw an idea out there. Remember what I said at the start about open strings. Open strings also do a really handy thing. It helps you move around. Keeps the sound going while I can move my hand. So I'm not dependent on keeping that finger in a particular point. I can let the open string ring and I can move my hand around. And I think this is certainly why I'm choosing to do it this way. Open string to end that little riff. Same again on the next string. And what that does is helps me just move my hand. It's not a huge move, but it just helps me move from that 4th fret position back to the 5th fret position. And it's a steaming riff, like it's moving really, really quickly. So anything to help move around, I think is beneficial. So look, that's the way I'm doing it. You can fret these notes. And then, you know, you've got an open string at the start of the riff anyway. So look, there's probably a couple of different ways of playing that. Me personally, I just like playing the open string. So I play it like that. That's just my way of doing it. So yeah, we do that a couple of times. Then we've got a bit of a solo thing. Now I haven't noted the solo, but it is pretty a good insight into Steve's playing. And you see the same thing happening again and again there, and then he ad-libs a bit, but it's a really, really good insight into Steve. Steve loves arpeggios and loves repetitive patterns, and I know he said on this particular album he was really being pushed to play really, really long solos. Just keep playing, keep playing, keep playing. And so it's really helpful to play some arpeggios. We should all know them. We should all have them as part of our toolkit as guitarists, and Steve certainly does. You know, again, he's a complete master of that. So again, remember that. We'll come back to that. But basically, what we've got is an E minor sort of arpeggio, and it's just the same shape again over the D, and then the C, back to the D. So I haven't noted, that's pretty simple. I think the tab is right on that bit, luckily, so we're good. Now the verse, coming to the verse is just playing the chords that I've just outlined there. So a second, but the tabs are missing a complete chord. So I'll just, if you're looking at the book, play that very well, but that little slide there from the D back up to the E and then it goes to the C is not even in the book. I don't even know how you missed that. Anyway, they've missed it. So I think it's a really important part of the rhythm part. So just make sure you get that in there. It also sounds a little bit like some vibrato happening there. So so choose, whether you want to do that or not. So we do that twice, and then we do the same thing again, but this time we do a bit of a chugging low E string without the slidey bit that I was talking about. And a little bit of a blues riff at the end. Now again, you notice the riff ends on the B again, so creating that tension there, that dominant note is really important. A lot of riffs you'll notice always end on the 5 because that creates that tension. It always wants to resolve back to the 1. So just a little bit of music theory there. Then we go to this thing called a pre-chorus, or like a little bridge sort of thing. This is really interesting, some weird stuff going on here. So we've got a F sharp sort of 7 sus4 type thing, and more open strings again. See, this is a really common theme through this song, so that's just why I thought that intro riff was played that way. But so we got there because we've got the A sharp and the B ringing at the same time, and we've also got an E against the A sharp. So this is actually another dominant chord. It's not the 5th in this key, but it is creating tension again. It wants to resolve to something. So when we hear these sounds, this dominant 7 chord, it wants to resolve, but it doesn't. So Steve goes to an A chord, which is a really weird choice after we've just played an A sharp in the F sharp chord. So really, but certainly it continues that theme of tension. It's just things aren't sounding right here, and that's typically what a pre-chorus will do, is really sets up the tension. So some really great songwriting here. So let those open strings ring, and then this A chord. Put your headphones on when you listen to this. There's some really interesting double tracking things going on here, and I think a bit of Brian May sort of inspiration here, where one guitar will do one rhythm and then the other guitar will do a slightly different rhythm, and they play off against one another, and the whole rhythm is just really a great insight into Steve again. Steve loves polyrhythms, and so what we mean by that is this entire song is in 12/8. You want to break that down even further. We've got sections of 6 and sections of 3. So 3, 6, or 12. This is played as a 4 rhythm, I think. So he's playing the chord and then 3 A notes. It's really difficult to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got a 4 over a 3 rhythm, and that's why it just sort of, it sounds really strange and offbeat. It's not off the beat, it's just the beat is the same, you're just not subdividing as the same as the rest of the song. So the drummer continues playing threes. Steve is playing a 4 rhythm over the 3 at the same time. So it's just, yeah, it sounds really, really strange. Obviously, lots of prog rock guys used to do that sort of thing, and we know Steve loves his prog rock, so I think that's a little bit of an inspiration there. Then we go back to the F7 again, the F sharp 7, and back to the A. Anyway, you know, check the tab. Then we get to the chorus. Now the chorus is really interesting. It's pretty straightforward, nothing complicated going on here, just nice big chords. So yeah, then so keeping it pretty simple in the chorus, which I think is probably just a practical songwriting decision. You've got really busy riffs in the verse, some really interesting open string arpeggios in that pre-chorus thing. So just keep it simple in the chorus. The chorus should, and in this case, I think is really about the big vocals and that vocal line that goes high. So you just want supporting chords underneath it. That's what I think they probably were thinking. So again, we've got just going mostly stepwise through the scale. We're not technically in E minor here. It's sort of like an E sort of Dorian type thing this time, because we're actually playing the C sharp rather than the C natural. And again, you'll notice the end of the chorus riff deviates from the rest of the chorus with its timing. So the rest of the chorus is really straight, like incredibly straight, and even almost a little bit dull. Pretty simple. It doesn't get much easier than that. So you've got to break it up a bit. And again, the last bar or the last 2 bars, a bit like your dominant trick that we were talking about before. Another good way of creating that tension is change the rhythm, change it up a bit, and that creates some tension where suddenly you go, whoa, what's going on? And then of course we're back into the riff. Now, the nylon section. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but there are a couple of things I do want to talk about. Ignore the book completely. It's completely wrong. Because, as I said, you really need to know how to play classical guitar and nylon string guitar, and this is all about open strings. So they've got a couple of the notes right, but they're battling with sound effects, and they've got laser bombs happening on the guitar, and they clearly struggled with this part, I think. So I'll tell you what I see happening, and thankfully we've managed to find a video of Steve playing this live back in the day, and so being able to map his positions, his hand positions, to what's going on, and of course less of the keyboards and all that stuff happening on stage in the live environment. So I think we've got it pretty close here. So what we're doing is so what are we doing? We are using fretted notes on the 4th and the 1st string, and we're playing a C chord, and the 2nd and the 3rd strings are your open strings. So this is going to help me move. So you see, I'm only playing 2 notes at one time, the bass and the high, and in the middle, and then we do that again. So we've got a C to an inverted G chord, like an A minor chord, and a proper G. Sort of, you would probably call that a D chord, an inverted D. E minor, back to a D. Inverted G, so the B's in the bass. C, and then a C sharp, sort of diminished happening again there. And again, you'll notice open E string on the top there. So what that does, gives me a split second to get back up to the top to do it again. So again, these open strings are really critical here. Finish it off on the C. And you notice no break in the sound there. So open strings, open strings, open strings. Hopefully you've got that. Then once we've done that twice, we come back to some positions down in the bottom of the neck there. Nothing complicated there. We've all seen these chords before, hopefully. So E minor, D with an F sharp on the bass, G, A minor. So we're definitely back in E minor now. So we're playing C naturals as part of the A minor here. We've got a G with a B in the bass. These are really common acoustic guitar chords. So if you don't know them, try to get used to them, try to get familiar with them. Got a D, creates a D sus4, which is again and just another way of creating a little bit of tension there. We've all heard that chord millions of times being guitar players. Then what happens is we do the same thing again, but not quite the same. It's sort of same, but different. We're going to do the same chords, just in different positions. So this time we're going to start the E minor. What have we done? We've just done this intro bit, the nylon intro bit in reverse. So instead of going we're actually going to play that going up the neck. So we start with the E minor, and again open strings, open strings. So we've got that E minor with the G on top. We've got a D with an A on the top string. And you see again the open strings are helping me move around. So I've got a G, A minor, a G with a B in the bass, back to the C, and then the final bit is just classic Steve Stephen. A bit of a D arpeggio thing, again breaking up the arpeggio into a tiny little bit of a polyrhythm. It's not It's not a 3 rhythm. Think of it like 4s. Look for patterns of 4s and 5s in there, and you'll see where the polyrhythm is. Now, obviously it starts the next bar again on that pattern, but everything else in between is falling into that polyrhythm. We're not getting the strong notes on the strong beats. So it can be a little bit complicated, certainly from a timing perspective. It can feel really strange and really difficult to count, but good. Anyway, read the music and you'll see what's going on there. Hope this has been really useful, guys. Hope this has helped you understand what is a killer song, and yeah, enjoy.